There we go.
Thanks, Tina.
Okay, I've been looking forward to this. So for our guests, the class has been studying obviously positive psychology over the last several weeks, and now we're starting to talk about positive institutions, the first of which is positive schools, positive education, and the next week we'll talk about positive work. But in preparation for tonight's class, they did a fair amount of reading on this movement, this positive education movement, which takes Seligman's model that you can see there, PERMA, and has found a way over the years to systematically integrate that into schools. Oftentimes you'll see when it's applied to schools, there's an H at the end, PERMA with an H, and the H represents health. For those who aren't familiar, we have a couple of guests with us tonight. Seligman, who's one of the founders of the positive psychology movement, claims that PERMA, represented by, the concepts represented by PERMA, I should say, represents a way of building a flourishing life by having a life filled with positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, achievement, and in schools, and for the rest of us, health. And the positive education movement, as those of you in the class know who did the activity for tonight, know that it's been applied pretty widely in Australia, Korea, the UK, and not a lot in the US. And the idea is not to abandon by any means really much of anything with traditional education, but to take traditional education and to find ways of integrating in meaningful ways, not just doing lip service, but really in meaningful ways in the curriculum and in the teaching and the learning, these principles of PERMA. And then the class also did some reading on and watched a video or two on learner-centered education, which is represented very well by Iowa Big. And Shavi and Hannah are both graduates of Iowa Big. They're from Cedar Rapids and went through the program there. And they're going to talk about their experiences with Iowa Big. So Chris has not formally applied PERMA, but from what I understand, having talked with her, it did pretty much happen, right? At least that was your thinking, and it happened without you having this acronym, without having the system available. So why don't you, Chris, first introduce yourself, kind of give us some background on who you are and what you've done over the years, and talk about this, talk about your work, and talk about how
PERMA has permeated my life.
Sure.
Yeah. I am Chris Meyer, and I am, well, let's see, where do I begin? I am semi-retired as my last position was the elementary principal at a little Lutheran elementary school or private school in Waverly called St. Paul's Lutheran School. Prior to that, I was the director of the graduate program in mental health and school counseling out of Buena Vista University. And I just retired last summer, and I'm doing that part-time, but only overseeing the practicum and internships of the professional school counseling program. I've been a school counselor. I've been a preschool teacher. I've been a substitute teacher, a mom, and a wife. And I think I'm excited to talk to you because this time in my life, being 66, it's a wonderful time to look back on all the things that you have become, and how this, PERMA, the positive, the engagement, the relationships, the meaning, and the achievement, and it has just really encompassed everything that I have done. And so let me just start out a little bit to wind my way through. My major professor for my PhD at Iowa State called me the pinball. So sometimes people think I need a little Ritalin, but I don't know. So you just hope you can follow my different ways that I will go with this. But I have been a storyteller since probably Gary was born in 1981. How's that? But
all right, yeah,
I thought so. But anyway, storytelling has been one of the things that I have utilized in all sorts, in my teaching, in my counseling, in my learning. And so I want to start out with a little one. When people say, can you quick tell us a story? This is my quick short story, but it also kind of sets the stage for tonight as I get into telling you about my life. There was John Blanchard was an author, and he was on the train going from one place to another. And as he was sitting there, all of a sudden a man who was extremely drunk plopped himself in the seat next to him. And he reached in his pocket for a flask and he looked at John Blanchard and he said, would you like a drink? And John Blanchard turned to that man and he said, no, thank you. But I can see you're a very generous man. And because of his response, they had a meaningful conversation, and that drunk man left the train a changed person, all because John Blanchard was willing to compliment instead of condemn. So when you look at what Seligman has wanted to do with his work, it's not just not learning those concepts as individual things, but infusing them into who you are, because that's what will make all the difference and in everything that you approach. So I guess it's always been my life's journey is to approach it in a positive way, and in teaching and in leading. I've been an administrator, and I will never forget finding this quote. And so when I became a leader of a school, it always was in the back of my mind that a leader is one with a compass in their head and a magnet in their heart. And that's positive. I mean, you know, when you think about the positive and negative reactions of a magnet, they pull together. And when you are with a middle school principal once said to me, you know, you can tell people when you go into a room, either someone will say, here I am, or, there you are. And you're always drawn to those people that say, there you are, because they're willing to look outside themselves. And so I think that's you get energy from someone that's positive, and somebody else that isn't, in whatever they do and however they engage and whatever they do, it sucks your energy. You can't gain meaning from it. You can't achieve. And so that positivity is so huge, and it can be learned, and I think it can be modeled and taught. I remember a teacher once that said, you know, some of you are in teachings eventually, you know, that's a big thing in education. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough money. And this one teacher said, give me a book. Give me a book. One book, and I'll teach anything. What she was saying is, you teach what anybody will want to learn anything if you develop a relationship with them. That is what sparks it all. Developing the relationships starts the mode of learning, infusing learning. And so when we talk about positive education in schools, it all starts with relationship. My dad, I gave him a gift, and he's really my mentor in all of this. I gave him a gift when our kids were little. It was a little book at Christmas called Grandpa, Tell Me Your Stories. And every day there was a question that he would have to answer. And my dad put it by his breakfast table, and he wrote it in every day. And at the end of the year, next New Year's, he gave it back to me all completed. My favorite page in that little book was August 3rd. And the question on August 3rd says, what is the best piece of advice that you can give me? And I memorized it. My dad wrote, as a psychiatric social worker once said to me, relationship is everything. It's not one thing amongst many things, it's everything. If relationships are good, good things will happen. If they are not good, good things will hardly happen. We can't form both sides of the relationship, but we can form our side. And through love and forgiveness, it'll affect the other side as well. That's PERMA. Relationships are everything. It's the grounding to positive education. It's grounding to meaning. It's a grounding to achievement. It's a grounding to engagement. It's a grounding to health. It's everything. So I think about the positivity that that we can gain from our interactions with people. And it always starts with looking at them and being curious about them. My dad died 7 years ago, and he had dementia at the end, but he always knew us. And the last thing that he said to me, I went in to say goodbye to him, and he said, "Stay curious." 2 words. Stay curious. Stay curious about everything, your people that you meet, that you interact with, your family, your things that you want to learn. Stay curious. I put that into my every morning greeting with our kids at the school that I led. Every morning I said, "Boys and girls, what else am I going to say?" And they'd have to yell out, "Stay curious." And I had a student at Buena Vista that loved that story. And then he called me up my first year as a principal, and he said his mom died, and he loved his mom. And he said, "Dr. Mario, I have to tell you, the last thing that she could say to me," I went in, I said, "How are you doing, Mom?" And she said, "I'm grateful." And I said, "Matt, we'll put that in our morning greeting." So I always said to the kids, "What else am I going to say?" And they say, "Stay curious." And I'd say, "And be grateful." You know, that repeating, that putting things in your life that you want to become, and making it a daily reminder. As Dr. Mitsud, I don't know if you were in on that class when Dr. Mitsud spoke, but he said we need daily reminders in our path of what we want to become. If you want to make a difference and become different, then you need a daily reminder. So that, stay curious. Before I put my feet on the ground or my floor in the morning, I go over mentally some things that I am grateful for. I got that from Dr. Sood, and that's my daily reminder, and it sets the stage for a positive day filled with meaning and engagement and education, all sorts of things in relationship. My dad, and I always talk about my dad, but he was a wise person, and he infused these things, and I want to pass them on. But he gave me, relationship is everything. He also gave me another set of 3 words. And he gave me those 2 words to stay curious. But here's the other 3 words that he gave me. And I pass this on to my students, and I pass it on to you. He always said, assign people value. If you feel valued by someone in your path, if you can make someone feel valued, look at the positive impact you have on their life. People will gain so much more from anything in life when they know that they are valued. My research for my PhD was in the area of resiliency. So I designed a curriculum because I learned that it can be taught and it can be learned. So the resiliency is made up of protective factors that we have internally and externally. I followed Bonnie Bernard's basic research because most researchers in resiliency identify a number of protective factors, these things, and they're not rocket science, but they all encompass most of each other's protective factors. But hers was such a good fit for schools and families. So that's why I followed her research. But it's her 4 protective factors for resilience are for internal protective factors are problem-solving skills. That's why street smart kids are so resilient, because they can have to solve problems to stay alive. Autonomy, the ability to make your own decisions, to think independently. Social competence, making relationships. You don't have to be an extrovert like me. You can be an introvert and make meaningful relationships. Purpose, knowing you have a reason, not necessarily what your career is going to be, but that you have a reason to be on this earth. There are also 3 external protective factors that she identifies. One is caring relationships. You're in this class together. You're led by teachers and professors that care for you. You have family. Caring relationships are huge for us to get through hard times. High expectations. When I was also an adjunct for UNI in counseling program and also in education, when I taught elementary curriculum, this little phrase jumped off the textbook page in front of me, and it said, "No one rises to low expectations. No one rises. So when you look at engagement or achievement in education as part of PERMA, it's high expectations. That's a healthy thing. You have to kind of weigh it so you don't make a perfectionistic rigidity there. But anyway, so when I think about the opportunities to contribute, and that when we assign people value, we give them an opportunity to contribute to life, and that we tell them, you can contribute meaningful things to my life and to yours as well, and others around us. So
I'm sorry, what's the third external protective factor?
Opportunities to participate and contribute.
Oh, okay.
That make you feel good when you are able to do that. Like tonight, Xavi and Hannah and I were asked to come and contribute in this class and participate. Whoa, we leave here feeling so great because we have that opportunity. It's so sweet. So I got to get done so I can leave sometime.
No, that's fine.
Am I doing you?
I didn't know how
you
much.
Cut me off, won't you? Will you like go like like that or something? Like
I do that anyway. But
well, yeah,
I didn't know how long you wanted to go on, because I was thinking we could do that and then ask you some questions and talk with you. But when we do that, we risk losing, some things that we might want to ask based upon what you've said so far, because
yes, because you forgot.
So can we maybe use this as a little break and just?
I think it's perfect.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, thank you. Boy, I feel valued.
I knew it would happen. You saw it in the flesh, you guys. Yes.
Oh, okay.
You got it.
So,
I live for those laughs.
Yeah. Now I have some, but why don't you guys? I'm sure some things have been turning in your head here. You might have something to ask Chris about.
I already told him how old I was. Anybody have anything that just you're rumbling around in your mind, or did it make you think of anything that?
One thing that really resonated with me was when you talked about, instead of saying, for example, oh, here I am, oh, there you are, and just how that little minor change can have such a lasting effect. And it immediately reminded me of when I was coming into work and I hadn't seen one of my coworkers in a while. So I was like, oh, like, hey, Jim, like, there you are. How have you been? And just being very excited and seeing how happy, he was to feel appreciated. And I could see how that can greatly impact the relationship and strengthen it over time.
And Xavi, now that you put it to words that are now out in front of you, you'll be so much more intentional, knowing what that you can do with that little phrase.
Right.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and I wanted to say, I appreciate how you said relationships are everything. This is Tina B. I have worked with and collaborated with Gary, Goody, and Deanne, and I'm just blessed to meet you because you have this wonderful, beautiful energy and story. I'm curious, can you expand on relationships are everything during the pandemic and the challenges of, I'm thinking about, you say relationships are health. It's grounding, which I totally agree, and all the grounding that comes with it. How do you, when you are at different points of comfort level, work through that relationship in a meaningful way to still connect with the people, whether family or friends, and keep those relationships?
Yeah. Tina, and you bring up something that is, because it's not only COVID that has been a real struggle and a challenge during this time, but also the divisions that we have felt within people's points of view politically and culturally, and the pain that some people are willing to recognize and some people are not and own. And so it does get very, very tricky. I'll never forget one time at a counseling workshop, I think that I went to, or something, that said, you can love someone that is disagreeable in your world, but you can put yourself in a bubble that you don't have to be in, you don't have to share that same proverbial space. You can have that imaginary bubble to protect yourself and them from some of those icky relationships. and um, it's hard to when in these times of COVID, the media is very loud, or our social media is very loud, telling us how we should feel. That, oh, this is hard on you. This is a terrible time. We are isolated. We're, kind of formulating what we should be feeling, and so the positivity. When I teach tools of resiliency, there's two major tools that are helpful, and one is self-talk, and one is reframing. And so when I teach self-talk, I always say, there's, when you think about somebody you don't like, you don't have to be with them. You can be kind and move away. Or if you can't make you can't make connections with this person, you can set your boundaries of time, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you're in a relationship where you're squeaking of everything that they're saying, and I just can't stand it, you can do some self-talk in your head, because they can't get in your head. You're in control of your head. You can say things over and over until it gets you past that moment. I'll never forget, I was getting my hair cut once, and I was waiting for my hairdresser to call me up, and her brother-in-law came in to give her an update on his wife, her sister, because she'd had a lot of medical problems. I had been on the ambulance service for a long time, and I'd hauled her in the ambulance quite a few times. And here, this man was kind of tall and lanky and white hair and slow to talk. And I overheard him say, well, the doctors say it's not eternal. It's not eternal. I thought, that's perfect. What is eternal? He got terminal and eternal mixed up. And so what a great self-talk. It's not eternal. What we're going through, it's not eternal. It's not eternal. And then when anxiety hits in, for some people that struggle with anxiety, if you say that over and over, it can get you past that intense moment, because a negative thought can't break in a positive thought. And then eye of the fly. That fly has beveled eyes, so you can't catch them in your hand. So if you think of reframing as being like the eye of the fly, just looking at something different. For me, I've tried to look at how much I have appreciated parts of, I had COVID myself, but I've loved this time of COVID, because I don't know why, but I've loved Zooming with people. I've loved the relationships. I've loved teaching on Zoom, because it's been possible. And so it's our reframing that's going to make some of that happen. I don't know if I answered your question or if I went for a long journey.
Oh, sorry. I bumped different buttons.
You really didn't like that answer, right?
But I was okay with it, Tina. I was okay, because I could say,
No,
it's not eternal. She'll come back.
I was so excited about your answer. I was like, ooh. So I definitely appreciate you, the eye of the fly. That's beautiful. And I've also heard, love from afar. So I like that bubble,
Love
that
from
visual
afar.
helps. And just the self-talk. I do a lot of public speaking, storytelling, coaching, and that's huge for that, but also a good reminder for resiliency and how we connect with people. So certainly appreciate that. And I especially agree with you that it is a reframe. I'm a face-to-face extrovert, but thank goodness we have Zoom. If this had happened 10 to 15 years ago, we would have been writing letters and calling, maybe emailing. And so how grateful. I've met some incredible people, reconnected with my dear friends, Gary and Deanne, because of Zoom.
Yes. Yeah. And it's picking out those little things. And then, like Amit Sood always says, and be grateful for it. It takes you places if you're willing to do that. Cool. Thank you, Tina.
I would like, there we go, to draw one of our students into this, only because her paper is on top here from your contributions this week. And there's a line in here that I think I'd just like to put out there, and Chris, you can respond to, and others can as well. And this is Hannah's response. And Hannah, you can jump in if you like. You said that you spent a lot of time in high school memorizing and doing busy work in order to keep a certain grade. and just going through the motions. And that was in response to, having looked at some things on positive education and learner-centered education. So I guess my question for everybody is, how common is that? I presume that most of you think it's quite common because most of you seem to be really excited, at least you reported in what you wrote, about the idea of the concept of the practice of positive education and learner-centered education. And I assume that some of that is a response, I'm presuming, is a response to that kind of thing in your own experience. So what do you think about it? Is that what it was like for you, memorizing and doing busy work in order to get a certain grade and just going through the motions? Which clearly suggests a world that's largely absent of PERMA.
I can say a little bit since I wrote it.
Sure, since, yeah.
The reason I made that point is because I feel as if this path that I've been put on since, kindergarten, it's all leading to something, to the point when I enter the world of work. And as during high school and now into college, I've become more aware of just where that leads without realizing where you actually want to take your own life. Getting it led by the system that is offered in America leads to, in most cases, search for money, search for satisfaction in outward things. And it's pretty obvious that that isn't met. Happiness doesn't contribute all that much by your environment, but from what's within you and your relationships and your community and stuff. And yeah, that's just kind of how I felt in high school, is like, it wasn't about making relationships. It wasn't about learning how to grow as an individual. It was about getting that letter on your report card, get into college, and move on from there. And then the experiences that I had where I felt like PERMA was more present is when I felt seen as a student, and when my personal development was cultivated and not taken for granted.
And several people on that last point in the class made comments observations along the same lines as that. The last thing you said there. Chris, you look like you want to.
Yeah, Hannah, when you said that last line, when you didn't feel that way when somebody made you feel, how did you say that? Recognized or no?
Yeah, just to be seen as an individual and not just put through a system, but like somebody took a chance to look at me and say, this is what I want to teach you, and this is what you can offer to the class. Kind of like what you said, how you say, I can get something from you and I can also give something to you. I was in a Spanish class, and it felt like a family environment that we were in, and we were learning from each other. We were able to help weaknesses where there were some and learn together. And I've never just felt so into an environment, and I was able to learn so much because all of this were gone, all of anxiety, my insecurities were gone because I felt accepted. Sorry, there's a dog. And yeah, I just felt like I could learn.
So Hannah, was it because of the leadership of that teacher?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was instilled from the start. This was like freshman, sophomore year of Spanish class. And she was like, we're all learning something that we don't know. This is foreign language, and it's foreign to all of us besides her. And so she kind of put those like barriers of being embarrassed and kind of like the competition that happens in some classes, that was just taken away. And it was like, we're here to learn together and grow together. It was a really good experience.
Wow. So you did not forget that class, and you did not forget her.
Oh, no, I'm still in contact with her too. Yeah, she's great.
You know, if teachers could learn that it's not rocket science, is it? You know, you make that class be about that person that comes in the door. And I am so glad you're here because I can't wait to teach you. And no matter how glad and good a teacher you are or not, they're going to remember it and they're going to learn from it. Kierkegaard, Søren Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher and theologian, and he said, we live forward and we learn backwards. So you look backwards now at that and you realize the value of that kind of education that you got from that teacher. Cool.
You know, and juxtapose that. Just think about your own experience, you know, each of you and me too, juxtapose that to the more traditional mode of learning or teaching, the checking off boxes, getting through the curriculum, making sure that these, you know, objectives are met. Whether or not somebody learns along the way seems to be immaterial to that, but just getting through the ticking off the boxes that are necessary for the assessment, because that's what the paper says has to be done at the with the exclusion of not even reaching the person, connecting with the person, helping the person really be center stage and or center in that world and learning something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a good book to read is called The Freedom Writers, WRITERS. It's about Erin, I can't remember. Anyway, she was an English teacher in California, and this is an amazing program. Waldorf University has just put her on as an adjunct kind of like person, but it's a book and it's a movie. You guys should rent that movie. It's awesome. And it talks about, she was put down because she made relationships with these kids, and these kids were struggling in their lives. They were living on the street, and and she just brought life to their world because the way she taught. And so sometimes the right thing is not always appreciated, like you're saying, Dr. Goody, that those boxes, if they're not checked, it's unfortunate. Yeah.
What's really unfortunate is not a lot of, I think that both not a lot of students and not a lot of instructors realize the ways that mundane like routine comes into play. I was pleasantly surprised, Hannah, to hear some of the points that you were making, because I have found myself feeling that way a majority of my college experience. Like Gary spoke on earlier, I was in Iowa Big, where things are a little bit different. So coming to college, it was immediate adjustment to the way that we do things. And yeah, you know, I've had plenty of conversations with people within administration and other, you know, student retention center, and speaking with individuals about why these kinds of things are an issue. And I am typically responded to with, that's just the way it is. You know, that's how it is. Or the other thing you might hear is, oh, that gets better when you get into your core classes, or like whatever your major study is. Which, you know, I feel at that point, then how can you justify the classes that I'm currently taking if you're saying that only the classes I take my third and fourth year are of some sort of value, and everything else is just because that's just filler or fluff.
Good for you. That is a stupid response, and I'm glad you're calling them out on that, because that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yep. You know, and it's
Stick with me while I waste your time. You know,
you hear,
it'll be
like,
good for you later on. You'll be fine. Yeah.
Right. It seems so automated at this point that's like the immediate response to, you know, that kind of issue of, I feel like I'm writing this paper or doing this project just because, you know, or it is specifically a 10-page paper because a 9-page paper isn't enough, you know, or like I can't successfully convey my understanding of this in 3 pages or 5 pages. Why is it this specific number, other than because you just chose it to be? Yeah, that's, I'll hop off the soapbox. You can tell it's something that is frustrating
But
me.
Xavi, you know what you just made me think of? you remember, what is the name of that gal from Sweden? She's like 16. She's on the spectrum and she wants to affect climate change. She said, we got to do something, you know. She
Greta
felt so
Thunberg?
passionate. Yes, and she kept asking the question. So when you say that, Xavi, it makes me think, what happens if we would be like Greta and like Xavi and say, well, can you direct me to somebody that can explain it? So I have a different idea. Do we have to do it? Can we do it? Is it possible? Is it, keep asking the questions until you get what you want, like Greta?
Hey, I'll tell you what, Chris, I don't know how much more material you have, but
No,
why don't we
I'm
No,
I'm
no,
losing.
we want to hear it, but I think let's do this. Let's turn to Hannah and Xavi, and then we'll come back to you. How's
Good
that?
idea.
But I want you to jump in along the way. Don't feel like you're just, no, not that at all. All right. So Hannah and Xavi, a couple friends of mine here, students at UNI, have met Xavi back in what, February of 2017, when we were doing a study of student engagement among high school students in Cedar Rapids. And then Hannah a couple years later. But both graduated from Iowa Big. Hannah, you went to what, Jefferson, and Xavi, you went to Prairie, right? So I will turn it over to you guys. I don't care if one of you goes first, you want to go back and forth, tell your story, talk about what learner-centered education was like for you. Hannah, these guys have read about Education Reimagined. So that's fresh. So Hannah's been
Noted.
very much involved in Education Reimagined, that organization. So you can speak to that as well. So go ahead, tell us about your high school experience.
Hannah, you can start us off if you'd like.
Okay. So, hi, I'm a senior at UNI. A lot of you are probably in the same boat as me right now. I'm studying elementary education and middle level with a focus in special ed. Iowa Big, I went there my junior and senior year of high school. Big focuses for me, some things that I really took away passion-wise are trauma-informed approaches to pretty much everything, specifically education, learner-centered education, and project-based learning. So that's kind of the direction I'm trying to take my teaching career. But while I was at Big, my projects focused on learner-centered education was kind of my ending one. You read about Education Reimagined. That project was partnered with them, and we kind of developed our own little Education Reimagined network on a smaller level in Cedar Rapids. But super neat organization, absolutely wonderful to learn more about. I also worked on food insecurity, adverse childhood experiences, and disability awareness.
Before you go on, I want to make sure that everybody is current on the framework there and how things work, because we didn't spend a lot of time in class talking about it. They've heard about things in bits and pieces, and some of them watched a video for tonight, but that's the extent of it. So I think their exposure is quite uneven. So the way the school works is that most of the students there, it's part of the Cedar Rapids Community School District. It's not a charter school. Most of the students there are enrolled at least part of the day in a traditional high school, but the other part of the day, they're enrolled in Iowa Big. And when they're at Iowa Big, they work within teams and then they pair up with a community mentor. And the community doesn't have to be right there in Cedar Rapids. It can be far away, potentially, as is the case with Education Reimagined. They're based in Washington, aren't they? DC?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they work with a community partner to solve a problem for that partner. And it's not just make-believe problem solving, it's solving an authentic problem for that partner. So it could be an agency, could be a governmental entity, could be a nonprofit. I think that covers most of it. So you worked on 3 different projects, right?
4.
4. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of take us through, I mean, you mentioned them briefly, but can you pick 1 or 2 and just kind of give us a more detailed sort of arc of the story
Yeah,
on that
I'll start
particular
from
project?
the beginning.
That's fine.
So everything kind of started with this mental health focus. I started learning about the adverse childhood experiences study really early into my time at Big. If you don't know much about it, it was a study conducted by the CDC looking at how traumatic experiences in your childhood affect you as an adult and what that looks like. So our project that we ended up doing based on this research was focused on education and applying that ACEs research to do trauma-informed teaching. which kind of led me to this teaching path. So going from the perspective of that mental health focus, I started to notice a lot of things about BIG itself and the program that I was a part of that were trauma informed. And it was really exciting to see that I was a part of something that was doing exactly what I wanted these other things to do, the ending goal of my project.
Anna, can I stop you for a second? And
Yeah.
can you define what you mean by trauma informed? That might not be a term that some people are familiar
Okay.
with.
Yes. So if I had to spark note it, I'd say, like, as an educator, considering the fact that your students might have something going on, you don't necessarily need to know what that is, but you do need to respond in a positive way. And you do need to respond in a way that is supportive of them and helps them develop resilience in those situations.
They might have, when you say have something going on, they might have some source of trauma in their
Mhm.
life, emotional or physical or social or.
Yes. So the ACEs study is kind of compiled of 3 different categories, and there's 10 overall. So it's abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And there's a total of like 10 different things within those. And most people have experienced probably 1 or 2, but some students have experienced 5, 6, 7 by the time they are freshmen in high school. And that really impacts how you interact with your educational experience and your ability to intellectually access that content. So yeah.
Okay, great. So what did you do then for your project?
Yes. So we worked on developing some trauma-informed professional development programs for the high schools in Cedar Rapids School District.
Okay.
And like I said, that was when I kind of started to notice that BIG was doing those things without having that training. And I started to realize that this model of learner-centered education on its own is trauma-informed. You don't have to teach people how to be trauma-informed if, one second. Sorry, people just came home. Okay, anyways.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, we love that. So, yeah, where was I at?
So, yeah, so you started studying this trauma-informed business within schools, and you were putting together a curriculum. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Okay. So we were working on developing PD for teachers, and that was when I kind of started to realize that this learner-centered approach was inherently trauma-informed.
So why do you think that was? What was going on within that environment that was providing, that was addressing that need without explicitly there being a curriculum that said it's going to happen and these need to be your learner outcomes to ensure that it happens? How did that happen without that?
I think BIG humanizes education in a way that this is my big kind of epiphany that I had in the beginning, listening to all of these wonderful conversations and input. I'm sure Gary and Deanne would agree. I don't sit in the back and not talk. So for me to just sit here and listen and take all this in was kind of profound. But I will say, it was just this big realization of, and I am a teaching major, so I'm a senior. I've been going through this program, and if I've noticed anything, it's how dehumanizing the whole thing is towards teachers and towards students. Everything is just so standardized. And so I do, we do, you do, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And if you don't do it, we're going to do it every single day until you get it. And when you look at the reality of the situation, and you look at it in a positive light and not from this area of you're at a 3, we need you to be at a 4 for this standard, you start to acknowledge like people as human beings. And that was what was happening at BIG. We worked on teams. We talked about our passions. We joined projects because we wanted to and had conversations about why we wanted to. Those are rich conversations that help you figure things out about yourself and about your relationships with other people and your goals. It's humanizing. And that was why it was so trauma informed, because when you are talking about what you're interested in and why you're interested in it, we all have our story.
And you're being treated with respect and
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hannah, can I quick throw something in? You
Please.
just made me remember something. I taught English in China for a couple summers. And I had a student 1 year whose name, they take English names sometimes in China when they learn English. And his name he chose was Antelope. And Antelope said to me one day, Chris, if American students don't have to take as hard exams as we do, don't have to memorize and rote and all that stuff as we do, how come there are so many excellent universities and colleges in America? And I said, Antelope, I don't know. But I surveyed lots and lots of teachers, and they all said the same thing. At this time, this was like 11 years ago or more. And we still had the ability to think outside the box, think creatively, think when you say dehumanize by meeting all these standards, we have just gone, and people are used to come to figure out how we did it. Now we are going the other way, aren't we?
And don't get me wrong, standards are important. They help us know
No,
where we generally need to go.
but
But just like looking at my peers that are in this program with me and watching the way they can set aside that these are people and that we are human beings and we can't teach, like, not everything is going to be positive, right? Like, of course, everybody's going to have their bad days. Teachers are human beings too. But like within that is positivity, like being able to look at yourself and self-assess, know what you need. And for you to be able to look at your students in the same way and know what they need, and not just instructionally, but socially and emotionally, that is pushed to the side in these teacher preparation programs. And that tells me that that was also probably pushed to the side in the teacher preparation programs that my K-12 teachers went through. So all those good teachers that we had, like teachers like the one Hannah was describing, those are people who just figured it out because they're people. They didn't figure it out because the Iowa Corps told them they needed to be kind to their students. They didn't figure it out because they went to a university prep program and they taught them how to be. No, like that's not how it works. It comes down to just being this positive, essentially, person, just like looking within yourself and recognizing that we are all just people.
Okay, so that was, how long did that was great. How long did that project run then? Your ACES project? Where
The
you developed
ACES
this-
project, I
where you-
believe, is still
Where
going
you then
on.
developed this curriculum?
Yeah, so the ACES project is still going on. I know they
Oh.
ran PD for the year after I graduated high school. I don't know if that's still
PD
what
is
they.
professional development? Is that
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yes.
all right. So
And
you
then,
developed, so you were on a team. I just want people to get the kind of the gist of this, how this works. So you were on a team. There were how many of you?
Big is ever changing. People come
Right,
in.
no,
leave
when you were
work.
on the ACES team.
I'd say there's probably 7 or 8 of us,
Okay,
depending on the time.
so you guys set out to try to better understand how to, with the goal that eventually developed, how to develop a professional development curriculum for teachers, right?
Mhm.
That they would then study, they would learn. You were doing this for teachers. I mean, you're a high school kid, like a junior in high school, and a team of you are writing a curriculum, a professional development program for teachers to use so that they can better understand and how to, I assume, identify up to a point and facilitate, work with students who have adverse childhood experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So you were entrusted with,
I think
I mean, does everybody get how crazy that is? That they were entrusted to be able to do that, given the latitude, given the freedom to do that. And you must have believed that it was going to be taken seriously, that it wasn't just something like, oh, we'll give them something dumb to do and then we'll, throw it away. And they're still doing it.
adults
So
really like to listen to high school students.
How
talk
empowering
about
was
things
all of that?
like that? What?
How empowering was all of that? And is
Oh
all
yeah,
of that?
extremely empowering. And Tina's question, she just put in the chat, how did teachers feel about it? Teachers were really into it. I
Wow.
think it just shows like this unharnessed power that high school students have, where when high school students like really put work into something, it will be well received. To be a teacher and to be taught from a student that they are going to have, this is what I need, I think was just so, it just really resonated with them. Like probably couldn't do that exact same thing right now and have the same effect because I'm just not a high school student anymore. And that doesn't have as much of an impact. I'm not their student. But 7 or 8 of their students looked at them and said, this is like real life and this is what we need you guys to do. And they were well receptive.
Hannah, can I ask a question, Gary, at this point? In our conversations, one of the things that has stuck with me for years that you said to us is that in your experience in your traditional school, you felt that the big expectation was mainly that you be pretty and funny and popular, and that was all good. And that in those times when you made efforts to be creative and engage, there was a lid on it. It didn't go anywhere. So you have expressed that at Iowa Big, where you're able to create at this complex level and to experience that idea of flow where you're really, really engaged. You've said that that kind of system helps build better humans, essentially. So if you could kind of tie in the idea of, and I'm going to ask Xavi the same question, basically, how that ability to create and engage at that really all-consuming level of flow, how you feel that's made you a better human and could do that in a practical way if that were the model more schools used.
I think it's really nice that we have like a male perspective and a female perspective on this one, because I think those are very different lived experiences for high school students. But like being a high school female, there's certain expectations that you have to uphold yourself to, right? To fit in or to be seen. It's almost like the people in traditional high schools who get the most, I don't want to say attention, but I guess like every teacher knows them, they are highlighted. They're every part of every this and that, the president of whatever. To get there, you don't have to necessarily like be very creative. You just have to impress the right people. And that it's not that like I'm trying really hard not to hate on traditional high school, but what Big did differently for me in that regard.
I'm sorry, Hannah. I just want to add for a footnote that for those who don't know it yet, but they will learn it eventually, that unfortunately that unwritten rule, that tacit rule that you just described, doesn't go away. The game is still part of the game is still impressing the right people. As base and simple and simplistic and ridiculous as that is. It's just, yeah.
And that's why Big was such a different system.
Okay.
Because I went there and I had ideas and people liked them and people let me try them if they didn't like them. And I got to engage in other people's ideas. And that is empowering in itself. I mean, when your worth is so much more related to your ideas and your work and your ability to show up socially, mentally, intellectually, it changes the game. It really does. And Deanne, what you were referring to when my creativity would just get shut down at traditional high school. My senior year, I will never forget this. I wanted to start a service club so bad, and they just shot it down in every way. And I was like, why would anybody not want a service club? But it's things like that just like cannot exist in a normal high school because of the red tape. And when you take all the red tape away at places like Big and just let people run free and go crazy with their creativity, it's beautiful what comes out of that.
Thank you.
Opportunities to participate and contribute. You build resilient people to get through COVID. Easy.
All right. Great. Xavi, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit to say something.
Oh yeah, well, I think Hannah put it fantastically. Being able to express yourself and be appreciated for it goes miles. And I can personally say as a student, I felt great being able to share my ideas or things I thought were cool, or questions that I had, and for it not to get shot down, but for it to be explored. Um, I found that, you know, when in traditional school, when I know you spoke a little bit about how some of those values are different. I think of times when I was in high school where I had different ideas or questions, or, you know, why do we do this that way? Or what if we did this? And a lot of the times it would get laughed off, or it would be like some outlandish, like you would have thought that I just told them that aliens were invading our school and there's a tornado coming and all this crazy stuff, when, you know, it would be just simple things. One of them, you spoke about wanting to start a club. I wanted to start a ping pong club at my high school. Spoiler alert, I did actually get it. And it lasted for about 2 years. But it also took me well over a year to get started. A lot of it was like through the administration as well. I guess they didn't necessarily see the value. And then it was like, why would we do this? I guess, I don't know. It was something that was laughed off really easily. And I wanted to do it just because it was fun, you know, just because it gave me something to do after school. We finally, after a year, got it all set up. And this was like a solo mission. There was no help, assistance. There was no, you know, guidance, which I know that if I had received some of that help, it would have been completed far sooner. And when it started, I had about 41 students come out on the first night. And that was big, you know, for me, having all these students here who also wanted to come play ping pong. Like, it's such a simple thing, but I felt great knowing that I was able to help start something that other people could get enjoyment out of. That's something that I think Big does a great job of, is focusing a lot more on your passion and putting your work, like being able to align that work with your interest. One of the instructors there, Sean, spoke with me my junior year in high school. And I remember I first came in and they, you know, gave me the briefing of the location, and this is kind of what we do here. And he asked me, you know, what's something that you enjoy? What are some of your hobbies? Okay, well, tell me, you know, this that you like, or what's something that fascinates you? And, you know, I listed off a whole handful of things. And he's like, okay, well, I have this project that kind of ties into that. I have this project. And, you know, they had almost about any kind of project you could have imagined, like agricultural projects, fashion. There was a lot of educational projects that were there. There were different science projects. I know there was one where you learned how to build a guitar. And they would try to fit in all of these different curriculum through these projects in a way that you were learning it without being told about it. You know, that it was something that you kind of discovered it as you went on. And that's something that I greatly appreciate taking away from IO Big. Just learning and mulling over and problem solving was something that was really big. A lot of times, I mean, you're being told the answer to the question in a lecture, or you're being told these kinds of things and you write it down. But I genuinely think that being in it allows you to better retain it and keep those lessons, and then apply those lessons to like broader issues, and not just that specific issue at heart. And that's something that I really enjoyed. I did not get to give like a full bio, so I'll run through that, I guess, really quick, if that's all right.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
All right. I am a third year student here at UNI, majoring in communications and interactive digital design. And I participated in a few clubs since joining UNI: Entrepreneurship Club, Towers Activities Board. I volunteered at the Waterloo Writing Project. And like, you know, we discussed, I am an Iowa Big alum. I was there for the same amount of time for my junior and senior year. and it is drastically different in their approaches for, how we learn, how we navigate questions, and it's so much more of a space where you can have communication, and there's a dialogue between me and my instructor. A lot of times you have professors who lecture, and you have specific points in time where you can ask a question. That wasn't the case, really. It felt more like a genuine conversation, and questions arose as we were discussing whatever issue was at hand. One thing that caught me off guard right away going to Big was there wasn't really use of titles as much. There was no like Professor, Mr., Mrs. That's Sean. This is Dennis. Nice to meet you. And that was something that I immediately appreciated because it felt more personal. I felt like I can understand them, and I can more so approach them when I have questions or concerns about any given matter. That was something that stood out to me. I was in 3 projects my senior year. I think I was in 2 the year before that, one of which was the Flow project. This is where I met Gary. It was a fun time. I really enjoyed it. I was also in Learn Code, Teach Code, where we just learn like basic coding of different kind of games and websites. And after X amount of weeks, we were then to have classes with middle schoolers and kind of show them how to do that. And one thing I will say with all of the projects that we had, may it be aquaponic farming, or it would be public bikes around Cedar Rapids downtown. Whatever the project was, there was always a focus and a purpose that was identified before we had even begun. And I think that this was a great way to ground what we were trying to do, give meaning to it, so it doesn't feel mundane and I'm just doing it just to do it. There's weight behind it, and even after I'm done with it, there's something that I can take away from it, and there's lasting effects to it. That tremendously motivated me to do whatever project I was in or whatever task I had, because I knew that I was doing it for a reason, and I was never in any kind of project that I was uninterested in. And that was something that was a big focus overall, is whatever project you do, you have to care about it. And there are times when students might not be performing how we liked, how it was intended. And the alternative was, okay, well, let's find another project. This must not be it. So let's find something else that interests you more. It was never like well, you're just a bad student, or, this is a problem, you need to figure it out. It was very understanding, and, there was a lot of compromise and shifting to the students' needs rather than the needs of the many in that way. I feel like I've gone on a bit about.
No. Can you go back? So how many projects were you involved in?
So in total, I was involved in 4. 2 of the 4 projects I helped kind of create.
Okay, and what were those?
Those 2 were focused, and there wasn't a name for the first one. It was kind of like if you're familiar with Game Pigeon, it's just an application on like iPhones. It is essentially a game library. In my junior year, I thought it would be cool to have essentially a game library and FaceTime put into one, where I was able to play games with my friends live. So I can see my friend as we're playing pool, or as we're playing chess, or cut pong, or whatever game it was. And I presented that idea to Sean, and he thought it was a great one, and it was something that he was really excited to.
Now, how many teachers? Okay, and how many teach? First of all, let's stop there. How many high school teachers would think that that's a great idea? Not very many.
Not very many. I think the few that would probably like, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, that would be cool. And then, all right, on back to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I bet Hannah's Spanish teacher would.
The system, like, yes, our Iowa Big teachers were fantastic teachers and great people, but there's also fantastic teachers and great people in traditional high schools. They just can't do these types of things because of the way everything is set up.
I agree with that.
Bobby, how many were on that team then? The game team?
I think that one we had about 6 students on. That
Okay.
one wasn't as successful because there's a big learning curve to
I'm sure.
yeah, designing and coding anything. But along the way, I definitely still took a lot away from that project. And the year after that, I jumped back into that idea with, into that mindset with a different project called Focused, which essentially was a platform for people who were interested in poetry or abstract writing. Um, where you could essentially write whatever you'd like or record whatever you'd like. And when publishing it to this platform, audience members could illustrate their interpretation of whatever you might be saying.
Hmm.
And I wanted a very connected experience where between the audience and the creators, where everyone in essence is adding more to this art, whatever piece at the time. And it was a great deal of fun working with the students and my classmates. And you learn a lot being the project lead on the group, because now not only are you navigating how to make this project a reality, but how do I help assign different tasks to some of my my peers, and what how do I specifically find one objective that would be good for this individual, because I know that you are really good in this area. So how can I utilize that skill to help add to this project? Something that I think worked great was there was never a strict deadline, like this is where you start, this is where you end. With most of the projects that I had been on, it was a lot more focused on the journey of it rather than the outcome. The outcome came out of all of the work that you did. And there were plenty of times when instructors would fall back and allow the students to work within themselves and figure out, okay, well, maybe we were very ambitious in thinking that we could get to this goal in X amount of weeks. So how do we change that goal? How do we refocus that where we know that's something that we can achieve? And if one student isn't pulling their weight, how do we hold them accountable? A lot of the times it was our students being in charge of, I need you to do this, because if you don't do this part of it, then I can't do my portion of the objective. And that relationship helped, push each one of us, because I knew that I played a significant role in everyone else's success in this overarching project that we had. And I loved that. Personally, I really did enjoy that collaborative effort and feeling in control of my learning. Being able to, if this is really interesting and I learning at a great pace, I can keep going at that pace versus having to stop, and vice versa. If I'm taking a bit longer to grasp whatever concept or to do this thing successfully, let's take that extra time to get you there. It was never like a rush to get to this deadline. It was always about personal growth and how we can more so go at our own pace and go at our own speed and learn it when we can learn it, and how we learn it, versus everyone needs to learn it this way. And if you don't get it, then you're somehow a bad student.
And the beauty of just like failure, they would let us fail, and then help us find our way back up. And like you said, Xavi, like it's the journey. In that journey, you learn so much. So much.
Really well done, both of you guys. How about some questions for them? Or anything anybody wants to add, or to contrast it to your own experience in high school? That's probably the easiest thing to do. Chris, will you want to, you had a little more to say. Why don't we,
Well,
like-
I'm just thinking about all the things that were said, and you know, it comes down to, I think in so many ways, perseverance. And I look at Hannah and Xavi's experiences, and they persevered. And where did you get that? What initially gave you that ability to think that you could continue trying? And I think that goes, and it kind of goes back to Hannah's paper about that Spanish teacher. In resiliency research, it doesn't take a whole bunch of people, and it doesn't take a long semester of learning. It sometimes takes one person that says the right thing at the right time in your lives that help you believe you can be that person, to persevere or to experience or to believe you can make a change for something. You know, my dad said, again, I said it, he always said that the things that happen to you in your life that change the way you approach life or think or anything are called your life's myths, those stories. Because myths are the stories that help us explain what we don't always understand. I had a life myth story that happened in 8th grade. In 8th grade in Greenwood, Wisconsin, where I grew up, the Catholic school 8th graders came up to the public school. Mary Jo Wagner came up to the public school that year, and I thought she was so cool. I wanted to be her best friend. And so in my insecurity to get her to like me, I was always talking about negative things. You know, oh yeah, did you see what Sue wore today? How about Mr. Channing in science class? You know, stuff like that. I'll never forget the day we were walking down the hill after school, and I was talking, saying something, and she turned to me and she said, life is always kind of blah to you, isn't it? And it was like the TV cameras were on me at that moment, and I could see what I was sounding like, and I did not want to be that person. And so I made an intentional choice to be positive. And now probably people say, oh, Chris Meyer gagged me. She's always so positive. You know? But it was an intentional choice, and it affected everything else in my life. So look at those things. Look at the big stories we heard from Hannah and Xavi, and the myth that those Sean and that the ACEs curriculum, all those things, that myth story that you created, that you'll go on and send you to places because somebody believed that you could be different, and you decided it as well. So I guess that's some of my thoughts.
That's really good. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about the rest of what you were going to talk about, or?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I can.
I'm just gonna budge in
No,
really
go
quick.
ahead.
I have
You
to
don't
hop
have to.
off.
Hannah, go ahead. Hannah.
I have to hop off for another meeting, but thank you all so much for sharing your ideas. And if you want to connect or have any questions, I threw my email in the chat.
Oh, great. Okay.
Bye.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you.
Hannah. Thank you. And we're gonna wrap up here in the next couple minutes anyway. So thank you.
No, I think I, you know, as we look at everything that we've talked about, it's something that you have to wrap around yourself. And when you look at all the times that Xavi and Hannah and the questions that were asked, all those words that were in PERMA that were repeated without even knowing that. So it's like a coat to wear. PERMA, that concept of positive and education-centered schools, it has to be not a curriculum, but a concept that you have to wear like a coat.
That's great.
Go
ahead.
So, you know, this was, I think, one of my first times actually hearing PERMA and all of what that meant. And as we talked throughout the day, I was trying to think of ways that I could apply that to Iowa Big. I think a lot of times it's really easy to address the issue, but solving it is a whole different beast. And I think in not seeing how things are done one way for so long, it kind of holds you back from maybe seeing all of the other ways that you can kind of expand. So I wrote down a few things that Iowa Big did that kind of fit in some of those different pieces of PERMA. So starting off, I mean, I'll skip positive emotion. That one I feel like was, yes. Oh, okay. Positive emotion was something that was completely, the forefront of Iowa Big, with the whole passion is key to your learning. So it was always about feeling good about what you're doing and finding something that you are genuinely interested in, invested in. And that falls right into engagement. When it's something that you care about personally, you're going to be a lot more invested in it. You're going to spend extra time working at it. And I found throughout my time at Iowa Big, a lot of the work that I was doing way more in that than in my other classes, because I felt like first I was obviously interested and passionate about that topic. But I found myself wanting to learn more about the things that I was being taught because I was interested in it. It's something that I valued. So I just, that natural curiosity carried me to the next hour and the next hour. And then before I knew it, wow, I did all this research and it didn't feel tiresome or like labor. It felt like just me searching the internet, you know. Relationships was a big part of it. And I addressed that with simply those titles and how you introduce one another, and asking me in the first few minutes of class, going around and asking how our week has been. That was something that we did in some of our courses, where we would take about 5 minutes and just what's a thorn in a rose about this week, one thing that you've enjoyed, one thing that hasn't been going so well, and going around the room. And that, like Hannah talked about, is humanizing, and it helps you build those relationships that then allows you to do all of the work that you want. Meaning was touched on when talking about why is what you're doing important? What is the outcome of this assignment that you're doing? Seeing those kinds of things unfold makes it feel a lot less like a hoop jumping kind of thing, where I'm just doing it to do it. And then you obviously with achievement, you feel more proud of the turnout, because you know you've worked hard on it and you've been really invested in it. I think of some of the things that ways we can switch policies that we have already in place to kind of allow for more of that creativity and that engagement. Something as simple as changing a page requirement from a minimum to a maximum. Just that one change, I believe, can open up how you perceive the project, how you work on it. So instead of saying you have to have 5 pages minimum, I need to have a maximum of 5 pages. So now, instead of the student who is going to add filler and fluff and repeat things because I need to make it to this requirement, I can be a lot more concise with what I'm trying to say, or my approach with it, or I can take it a different route. Instead of saying I need to have a minimum of 5 photos or 5 sources, having this, changing it where I'm not trying to reach this deadline, but it is an allowed thing. I think that opens up a whole gate of freedom where I can then add a little bit more of my personality to it. And honestly, I feel that a lot of times having that opportunity and opening it up where students can learn more, a lot of the times when it's something that they're invested in, they're going to go that extra mile just because they enjoyed it, just because they wanted to learn more about it. I find that when I have to reach a specific limit or fit some specific quota, that's when I get in that mindset of, well, I'm just doing this just to do it. I am doing it because it's supposed to be like that. And then we have 30 presentations that all have these same things that are just thrown in there because they were told to be in there. I think directly to a presentation that I had to give my freshman year here at UNI, where there was X amount of quotes that we needed, images, and so on. And there were just random quotes thrown into presentations because they were supposed to have them. It didn't necessarily tie into what they were talking about, and it felt out of place because of it. But they checked that box, and that's all that mattered. And when the goal is about checking the box, then you miss the whole point of learning in the first place. So yeah, those are some of the things that I kind of found, ways that, that changing it from such a formal to more of an informal thing allowed me to feel more comfortable asking questions and having conversations and not worried about embarrassment or, oh, like I look stupid or anything like that. That positive environment and allowing students to be curious and learn and doing it how they would want to do it goes a long way, in my opinion.
And I guess I'd like to leave my final thought too on that point. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? We might not be able to affect the classes that you are taking now but who do you want to go on to be, and who do you want to affect because of that? One of my favorite TED Talks is by Ben Zander. He used to be the director of the Boston Pops, and he's just a funny guy. And he's in this TED Talk, he's trying to show how to teach someone to appreciate classical music. And he's humorous, but you got to hang in there. And here's a spoiler alert. At the end, he says, you look for the shining eyes. And so watch the thing and so you can see how it goes in. But I think I want to go back to Hannah's paper about the Spanish teacher. Spanish teacher had shining eyes, and it made Hannah know it could be different. And she'll take that on. So who do you want to be? You want to be shining eyes so you can make that difference for somebody in their learning.
Really nice. But then I had high expectations for you.
Well, thank you. I hope I have
I did. In fact, I'll create one more opportunity here for anybody to ask anything or say anything. For a couple of seconds here, Hannah's back. All right. So Hannah, your contribution gave us a lot of fodder that we really were able to do a lot of good with. So thank you. And I'm sure, and others were, wrote things to the same effect as well. And Xavi, of course, what you're describing there is an approach to education that is, anathema to how it's done currently, because we live in a world where this whole concept, we're in love with assessment. We love to measure and assess everything, whether or not it's anything that's really needs to be assessed or that it's just, anyway, I won't get going. I'll get on my soapbox and we'll be here until midnight. But I very much appreciate what you had to say, and Hannah Bertram's contribution, her synthesizing PERMA and Iowa Big and seeing that, hey, what's going on there? And I think she makes, all of you guys have made a really good case for this, that what's going on there in that environment is really doing PERMA. It's by humanizing the environment, by doing all of this stuff without having to have some kind of a formal, systematic curriculum for doing it. Really good. And some of us, John, you already have a research topic for your study, but someone else who wants to join our lab and is interested in understanding high school learning, that'd be a really good project. Xavi, why don't you join us? We can hook you up with a research project.
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe, I don't know.
Right.
So anyway, really good. So Chris, it wouldn't be right. She doesn't know this is coming, by the way. It wouldn't be right if we had this time with you and you didn't share a little Norwegian with us. Perhaps even a little Norwegian, some lyrics.
Some lyrics like a happy birthday.
With a melody.
With a melody, like we could do "Oh So Swingery," or we could do the national anthem, or we could do. I did sing to Gary for his birthday, and my sister turns 70 tomorrow, so we'll sing it again. So here's a happy birthday song in Norwegian. Hurra for deg som spiller, det deg Gud til virker til lære. Alla ring omkring seg, deg viser og søyd, og vi vil marsjere. Bukkennikken snu oss omkring, danser så for deg med hopp og sprett og spring. Ønsker deg av hjertet alle gode ting, og se meg så, hva vil du mere? Gratulerer. Oh, so svinger vi på seilen igjen. Hey, skål. That last part is a little cheers song when you drink a little glass of wine. John, thank you.
and it's really good when we have a party and Chris sings and her husband plays his
the accordion.
Button accordion.
And
Yeah.
I have to tell you guys, I am out here in Seattle taking care of my baby grandson for a couple of months before the kids finish their school year. And our kids calmed down when they were babies when my husband played the accordion. So my husband made a recording for Gary's birthday, and I've been playing that for the baby to calm him down.
Does it work for the baby?
Yes, it does.
Works
So
for
thank
me
you for
too.
having a birthday.
Yeah, well, thank you for having a husband.
That's good. That's how you say you're welcome in Norwegian.
Perfect symbiosis.
They're
Okay,
perfect.
all right.
Well, thank you for letting me be part of this. I just adored this time. And Hannah and Shavi, you're just a great inspiration for me. So thank you. And Deanna and Gary, of course, you know, I can't live life without you. So, and so thank you. And Tina making some good connection, and Hannah, and that your paper was awesome. So thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you, everybody.
you.
I will email the class. I'm thinking at this point that we'll meet in person again next week over in the union, but I will let you know here shortly. Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Okay,
Bye, thank you.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Shavi, Chris, thank you.
Yeah, oh, it's my pleasure. See you later, everybody.
I'm hoisting a frosty mug to you in my mind, Chris.
In your mind. Oh, I can read your mind, Dan. And you know, it feels wonderful.
Hey,
Linus, you started with us, and now we can end together.
Oh,
you're-
your microphone's on.
You're muted.
off. I mean, muted. You're muted.
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
I've got construction work going on here, so I couldn't.
Oh.
tune in. We'll get this house done sooner or later.
Is that what you're working on, a house project?
Yeah, well, it's in Dallas. We lost 80% of the house when the pipes froze in February, so.
Are you kidding me?
No,
Part of
I'm not
that.
kidding.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, you poor
$80,000 and counting.
Hmm.
Oh, I am
Thank you, I
so,
enjoyed it.
oh, this was a fun night. Thank you guys so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay,
Go
see
on.
ya.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.